Silicon Valley, technology, art, green, and sustainability.
Welcome to another episode of Silicon Valley Tech, Art, Green, and Sustainability, SVTAGS. Today I'm very honored to have a young lady with me who is a technologist, an evangelist, and a forward thought thinker in the industry of technology and several different things. Welcome, Elisabeth, and I'm going to pronounce the last name wrong, Kindig?
Kindig.
Kindig,
Yeah.
Okay. Great name, and I read your article at the NAB Show, and we missed meeting, but I'm glad we missed meeting because we have the opportunity to have you on the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, whatever you'd like to share.
Thanks, Heather. I really appreciate being here. NAB was such a great conference. There was a lot of new technology that was being launched. I'm originally from the Midwest. Go Cubs. I'm one of the big Cubs fans out here.
And I would never guess that. You don't have any kind of accent, so yeah.
That's a good thing, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's all good.
You can tell a Midwesterner because we're one of the only people that merge for oncoming traffic, so that's one way. But yeah, I'm a transplant. I spent a little bit of time in Boulder, Colorado, which is a really neat area. A lot of work-life balance going on there, a lot of sports, and now I'm here in Silicon Valley and really excited to be working with products and evangelizing them.
And you moved here, you worked for a VC company. Mm-hmm. Tell us, what was that like? Did you work all the time? I mean, how did that transpose that you moved here?
That's a great question. I don't think there's really any 9-to-5 job in Silicon Valley if you're truly going to succeed here, and I found that out the minute I got here. I was working for a VC firm, and one of the first festivals that I attended was Launch Festival, and there were 200 startups, and it was so noisy, and it's like all of these startups are basically trying to get their product heard by venture capitalists, and it was my job to sift through those startups and recommend a short list for the VC firms. I think within the first month I was here, I was sitting in portfolio meetings with Andreessen Horowitz, which was like amazing, right? So I definitely broken in very quickly, and I started to work on a blog at night, and that started putting me on the map. I had over 300 contributors to the blog, over 2 million page views in 1 month during its peak in 2013. So, all of that activity led up to the evangelism that I do now for my current company, Intertrust.
And so the blog you started while you were here, but you had another blog while you were in the Midwest too?
This is all citizen tech.
Okay.
So it was launched out here, basically from the VC work that I was doing. And there were some really big thought leaders that wrote articles for the blog. The founder of the Ripple protocol for Bitcoin, 500 startups wrote a really great article about how to solve real world problems in like India, because some of the problems we solve in Silicon Valley are first world problems, right? Like social media or apps, dating apps, or connected cars even. They're like these very first world problems, and what this website brought about was allowing technologists to write about their expertise, and so it gave me enough success to continue the evangelism that I do now.
So starting the evangelism really started with the VC company then?
Sure, yeah.
And what's that like now for you? I mean, what do you do as an evangelist?
Sure, well, right now I work with a suite of products. Intertrust is building, basically it builds trust for the connected world, and what that means is like there's this huge problem that we all face as we continue to build technology, and that's privacy and security related. Our suite of products attack this from all different angles. We have ExpressPlay, which is a multi-DRM. It's content protection for the media and entertainment industry, which is, I think, how we connected at NAB. White Encryption solves app security, so it protects encryption keys that are inside of the app from hackers. And we also have Personograph, which is a audience and data management platform. So it's like all this heavy technology, right? And it's like, how do you keep it fluffy and like digestible by people? And that's kind of my job. So I wrote about, in this case, drones. I've written about the Internet of Things, which is definitely going to be one of the bigger changes in the tech landscape over the next 5 years.
Right, Google just had their huge Internet of Things.
Yep.
I'm behind on the slides, so I'm going to pull up slide 1, which we should have pulled up already. Tell us about this slide. It has Tech Week in the background. Okay.
Sure. I was in Chicago at that time, and I was evangelizing Personograph. It's an audience data platform. Basically, if you think about your mobile device, it's probably in your pocket right now. There's multiple device signals that Personograph pulls from, and it basically takes this complex, tough data and makes it into simple, digests it for simple audience segments. So in this case, I was talking about publishers who can benefit from knowing who their audience is. So like at any given time when you're inside of a mobile app, the publisher would like to get to know you better, and that's what our data allows you to do.
That's great.
Yeah.
I've got another one too that I want to pull up because I wanted to pull it up before this next question. Now you're with a panel here and you're the only gal. I love that. So tell us about this photo.
I was also evangelizing Personograph in this photo. Those are all gaming companies and apps, pretty well-known gaming companies on the panel with me. And I was explaining to them that the better you know your audience, the more successful you're going to be and the more revenue you'll generate. And our platform allows you to know your audience.
So we talked about deep linking. And can you tell us about that and why that's important for what you're doing as well?
Sure. Deep linking was one of the first projects that I evangelized. It basically looks at the mobile infrastructure and adds URIs, which are basically very similar to URLs, in that you can navigate horizontally across the app. So it was just one of the first projects that I evangelized. What's more exciting today, and Google has addressed deep linking with app indexing, but what is probably more important today is, what are we going to do with all the data that mobile generates, right? Like every action you take on your mobile device is creating data that needs to be protected, not just from hackers, but from lots of different constituents. And those are some of the bigger questions that we'll have to answer as we move forward.
And then deep linking, is there any other companies you want to mention that you're working with or that should be noted?
Gosh, there's a lot of companies that implement deep linking. Spotify does a great job of indexing their songs, and for instance, how many times are you going to say to your friend, go to the Spotify app? You're going to tell your friend, I just heard this great Taylor Swift song, or I just heard this great Prince song, and you're going to want to navigate them directly to a Prince song. And in order to do that, you have to implement deep linking, and Spotify is one of the first apps to do that, for instance. Google is obviously making big waves because it's indexing all of the apps, which will greatly help app developers. I mean, the way I kind of came about
probably
this...
Facebook as well.
Well, yeah, Facebook, yeah for sure.
Yeah.
They've come up with a protocol for it.
Okay, and so I'm going to pull up the next slide. We met at the NAB, and actually this is not the slide, so tell me about this one.
Oh, I am evangelizing Intertrust, which is, it builds products and builds trust for the connected world.
It's such a cute photo of you too.
Thank
I love
you.
that photo.
Yeah, I'm having a blast, aren't I? So again, Intertrust attacks this privacy and security from all angles, and what we were evangelizing there was Express Play, which encrypts video, and it's content protection for the media and entertainment industry. And like this has been going on for 25 years, right? Like Intertrust is a super solid company, and now it's moving into these emerging areas with the trust and the security that it's had for this long as a legacy company.
And so with drone security, you guys
Right.
are working with drone security, which is how you started with the article as well. So it links back to that.
We are a thought leader when it comes to security. So you have to think about drones for a minute. For the first time, apps are actually controlling a machine that is, 50 pounds and can go like 40 miles per hour.
Or more.
Or more.
Like last year there was a drone at NAB, and I'm sure it was there, I didn't see them this year, that could pick up a 180-pound camera.
Right.
The movie industry, so it could pick up a person basically.
Apps couldn't do that before.
Yeah.
Apps are primarily for entertainment, right? And so now that apps can control machines that are flying around, Intertrust is basically saying, let's make sure those apps are secure And they have a product to do that, which is white encryption, to make sure that hackers can't get into the encryption key and through reverse engineering and whatnot. Because otherwise you're able to not just take confidential information from this hack, but now you could, who knows what could happen if a 50-pound drone is
right. And you actually
flown
wrote,
into
let's
an
pull out,
audience.
I think the next slide should be the drone slides. Yeah, these are just some of the smaller drones, but I mean, the one in the middle actually looks very much like the one that could pick up 180 pounds. It was all black though, of course, and the arms were they moved so you could fold it down into one tight little box. So we could pull that down. You wrote about security with the military too, how the software got hacked into, right? And they took over a drone.
Yes.
So that's pretty scary.
Right, and what's really interesting is that we will encrypt DVDs and computers and television and lots of old devices, but we're not actually encrypting drone footage right now, the video of the drone. So the U.S. forces have been caught doing that or not encrypting through hacks. And so the footage that the drone is taking has been accessed by insurgents.
And now you have all the
whatnot.
hobbyists too, and those could be hacked into and flown into something or whatever. So it's pretty interesting where that's going to go.
Especially once you have like drones start to tape live sporting events. I think that would be like a really good use case, right? Like, is that video encrypted, and is the app that the pilot is using on their smartphone or tablet, which is how they typically operate the drone, a lot of drone manufacturers have an app operate it, is that app protected from any kind of hacker who could then take control of the drone?
Well, I don't want to get too much down the rabbit hole, but last year I also got to hear the lady with the FAA who wrote the laws on, if you don't have a pilot manning your video and you're commercially using it, then you could have a $10,000 fine. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out as the software gets better and more intelligent that are going to be managing, the video and the drones. So I think at that time there was 800 companies that applied to be grandfathered into approval by the FAA to be commercially flown with their company without the pilots. But anybody after that a year ago was supposed to have actually a commercial pilot flying the drone and someone else managing the video. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out, and if software will take care of that issue in the future of putting all the flight paths into it and going down the rabbit hole. So what do you think in the future, what do you think are going to be some of the biggest changes in technology in the next few years, in 5, 10, 15 years?
That's a great question. I think when we say IoT, like, just to break that down, what that means is the Internet of Things. A lot of people have heard of Nest, which is the thermostat. How your kitchen refrigerator may start to be a smart refrigerator, how your car has smart features. There's 6 billion connections right now of various ways. Medical devices are one of those connections. That is going to grow to 50 billion by 2020. So now is a really good time to ask, who is securing those connections? Who is responsible for it? Is it the manufacturers? Because car manufacturers have never had to deal with security before, right? They haven't had to deal with tech security.
And I'm going to bring that slide up right now. It should be the auto slide, and we can look at, on the right is California, Berkeley, the solar project. They've won a couple times. They've gone around the world with it. On the left is Lexus, and I got to drive that at Laguna Seca, and basically they're like, oh yeah, everything is, it's all software now. Everything's controlled by software. We could pull that down. And there's been several cases where cars have been taken over now with software, different things in it. And so that's an interesting aspect of the software, where that's going. And
we've seen many car manufacturers have hacks. So, I don't want to go through the list of who they are,
and you guys work with car manufacturers as well.
Some pretty well-known car manufacturers, and some of those have been proven to be done through the app. Some are through the Wi-Fi hotspot, and basically you can access it and start to disable the brakes, and lots of various things that you can do with the car. So, it's kind of scary, but at the same time, I think it's a good discussion to have. Is again, is it the manufacturer's job to be a security company? Is it the developer who creates the app? How much awareness should the end user have? These are some pretty big questions that, again, I get to evangelize on a daily basis, because our company is really an advocate for strong security measures along with privacy. because on top of it, all of this data that, like, I mean, at this point, just think of this, 20 years ago, the internet was for fun, right? I mean, it was all for fun. Now, everything you have of value is being stored on the internet, down to even your heartbeat.
Right, they say that this phone, right, has more power than when people went to the moon, than the actual rocket that went to the moon, all the technology that was in that, which is pretty amazing, you know, how many years later, 30-something years later. You have a knack for writing, and there's a ton of people that follow you, and because of that, they love what you read, and you know, it's amazing that you have the 3 Twitter feeds, and that you had the blog that you had that had that many people host writing with you. Tell me your process on writing and what you choose to write on, and also how often do you write too, I guess?
Oh, that's a great question. I read a lot. I mean, that's one of the bigger pieces of the process, is that I read so much that I can start to pick up on what people have not written yet or covered yet. So I try to write about those things that I think are missing in the conversation. That's how I came up with the drone article, which was like, well, wait a minute, what's going on with the video footage, and what's going on with the app that's controlling the drone? Most people are just kind of talking about the newest drone that's out on the market.
And for people that haven't read that, we're just going to tell them that it's that you wrote on Hollywood and the film industry and drones, so they can ping you for that article. So
and I also am writing about some of these cars that have been hacked, and whose responsibility is it. And so I really read a lot, and I stay really connected with a strong network of people in Silicon Valley who.
Do you mostly read blogs? Do you read magazines, books, all of the above?
All of the above.
Okay.
Yeah, big bookworm.
That's awesome. I know it seems like the only time I read is on planes now, because I'm reading on the internet, but actual books on planes, because at night I'll just fall asleep. So the next 2 questions I ask you about your what's been the biggest challenge and what's been the biggest win for you, and I think we probably have about 10 to 12 minutes left. So let's go with challenges first, if you want to touch on that. If you don't, we could just jump straight to the accolades and the biggest wins for you.
Okay. Well, one challenge that I had that I think a lot of people in the mobile world can really absorb is that I developed an app, and like nobody downloaded the app. It only had 800 downloads.
What kind of app was it?
It was for the blog site that was meanwhile getting all of these views. So it's the app discoverability, and is a huge issue. It's just a big pain to solve.
You have to have an advertising budget, I would imagine, to get it out there.
Yeah, you really do. And it's a very noisy market. And then, the other thing is I had no visibility into who was already using my app in order to grow that audience. Are they tech enthusiasts already, or are they more curious and outside of the tech industry? So that lack of visibility was an issue. And the other thing I think, it's always...
And did you develop the app through your company, or did you go through iTunes, or?
I developed it myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then another challenge, I guess, the common one is people like to bring up women in tech. And I mean, for me, I think that there's a lot of companies that really encourage women. So for me, I've always found great leadership teams that promote women in tech. So those are the kinds of ways that I've worked around it.
I'm going to pull up the next 2 slides really quick too. The first one, that's your Citizen Tech. And then, and this is the one we've been talking about. So you keep that live still, the Twitter feed, and then the blog as well?
Yes.
Okay. And then let's pull up the next one. And this is you speaking somewhere. What's this one?
I'm speaking at GamesBeat University. I'm actually talking about the emerging markets and what it's like to expand into regions such as India, Southeast Asia, Africa, because I worked with an emerging markets company for a while as well.
And so what's been the biggest win for you, the biggest accolade?
The biggest win for me would probably be the page views I've had on Citizen Tech. It's pretty difficult to drive that level of web traffic, and it was really exciting. I'd like to revive it again.
Do you want to tell us about is there anything in green tech or sustainability technology that you'd like to mention? Is there anything that you see coming up the pipe?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, so I'm just going to go back to the Internet of Things, because it's really where, remember before mobile was big, and now we have 7 billion smartphones, or I'm sorry, 2 billion smartphones, but 7 million mobile phones. That shifted everything, right? How you live your life. I mean, everything changed. It was a big deal when it came. So the Internet of Things, which is, again, 50 billion connections, but then you have to realize that there could be up to 25 vulnerabilities per device. So there's this thing called the security axiom, where you're only as strong as your weakest link. So security-wise, you have to protect all vulnerabilities. Otherwise, you're exposing yourself. So when you talk about clean tech, right, and you talk about green tech, where is that data going to go? I mean, we're basically starting to create solar fields or wind farms, and that's all great. And I think a lot of people politically like to speak about this new vision for the world, but in reality, where's all that data going to go? And that is the kind of technology that I get to evangelize. That's one of our products, is that Personograph can pull in data from those kinds of sources and interpret that data so that you can start to know, this is the wind turbine that needs to be fixed. This is where and how you should put out solar panels. So when you talk about clean tech or green tech, those are that's more important from my perspective than the more political side of that.
We could have another whole show on the smart grid.
Yeah, the other thing
I've had a couple people, and we've got a book down here, Christy Herzog, who's written 3 or 4 books in several languages on the smart grid, and that we could do. You could come back and we can have her on the show and talk about that. Is there something, I'm going to pull up the next slide for our community slide. Is there something that the community can help you with now, and you or your clients or your company? Thanks. Yeah,
if you like what you're hearing and you want to know more, these are big topics, and myself and Intertrust and the products that I've mentioned, which is White Cryption, Express Plain, Personograph, we're always publishing on these topics. We really try to be thought leaders and advocates on digital security, privacy, trusted computing. And we actually have a lecture series that is coming out on YouTube, which really pulls from the academics.
And that was going to be my next question too for you.
Yeah.
Is there specific, I'm getting the 5-minute warning, is there specific events that are important to you to go to, either annually or monthly, either locally or internationally? And then are you hosting events? So that's pulling right into that question.
I go to quite a few events, because of the products that I evangelize, data, security, privacy events. The Distinguished Lecture Series, again, that we put on, pulls some really amazing thought leaders around these topics from Ivy League schools and whatnot.
It's a web series?
It is a web series. And we're starting to promote that more now, yeah.
Okay. And so people can go to Intertrust and find that?
They can go to Intertrust and find that, yes.
In events or whatever. And then events that are a must for you to go to, either locally or internationally or nationally. What about that? What are events that you have to be at?
I love the Mobile Beat, Games Beat series that Venture Beat puts on. I think that they pull in some really great speakers. I love the startup events that we talked about, Launch Festival, TechCrunch Disrupt. Those are always classics.
Did you go to the Google Internet of Things?
The I.O.? No, I did not.
You didn't?
No.
Okay. I figured you would have been there.
Yeah,
maybe next year.
I should have been there.
You should have been speaking there.
Yeah.
Next year. And of course, SVTAGS, the idea was to build an educational website with legs, this being one of the legs educational events. So we'd love to have an event with you in the future as well, too.
Great. Sounds good.
So I'm going to have them pull up the next slide. And my next question is there one thing that you want to leave with folks, too? And this slide it talks there about what your company's about. I looked up on the website and I loved what it said, so I put that there for people to see. But they can go to Intertrust and also on the Twitter Intertrust. Tell us what's the one thing you want people to remember about you or the company.
We've covered so much in the last 20, 30 minutes with drones and internet connections and all of that. But ultimately, right, you have security and privacy. And the world is going to need an advocate there. It's going to need an intermediary. And that's what Intertrust does. And it's building trust for the connected world, and it does that across a suite of products. So I'm really excited to work for them and be an evangelist for those products.
Well, I guess it was the CEO I met in your kitchen.
Yes.
And I got a good feeling about him, and then I read what you guys do, and it's pretty amazing. Yeah, so kudos to your company, and hopefully we'll have you guys back, maybe have him on the show as well. Any other future plans that you want to talk about?
Future plans, I'm working on a few articles around the Internet of Things, and I'm really looking forward to that.
And where do people find the articles then?
They're published through various press outlets.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if they go to your Twitter feeds, they'll find where it's being published.
Right.
Okay. San Francisco, I threw this one in there, but you live in the city?
I actually live in Marin County.
Oh, okay. Well, so for people who are from out of the area that are coming to the area, even people in the area, is there a place that you specifically, what's your favorite place in the area to hang out?
What's my favorite place in the area to hang out? I mountain bike a lot, big athlete, so you have to like bikes.
I think you're a climber too, right?
A snowboarder, yes.
Snowboarder, okay.
Yeah.
There's a great photo of you it looked like you were going to climb, but maybe you're going down the mountain. Is there a favorite restaurant or hangout that you like to take your tech friends to, or?
There's a couple of restaurants in San Francisco, actually. Dosa's is really good for vegetarians. Greens is really good for vegetarians. So, yeah.
Okay, and any last thoughts that you have for the audience too? Anything else?
Again, it's like there's these big topics, right? And you try to cover them in these short periods of time, but ultimately, hopefully they can latch on to a few people that are thought leaders in the space. I truly believe my company is. All of these different products that we have are angled just perfectly. I mean, we're covering content protection. We have the audience and data management platform. We have even a platform that protects genomics and allows medical professionals to access it. So if all of that sounds overwhelming, great. Come to me and come to Intertrust, and we'll simplify it for you.
Well, thank you for joining us. We're closing now, so
Okay.
And thank you to the
Thanks.
audience for watching us. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, SVTAGS on Facebook, Twitter, of course, www.svtags.org. And thank you to our sponsors and people who are sponsoring both Create TV and our show. And make this a great week by conserving, reusing, and rethinking the way you choose to live here in Silicon Valley and beyond. Thank you for joining us. Thanks.